Mm.
All right. Astinator's there. Who's going to be joining us in an hour or less.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So the idea for this Tavern Talk, if you've not been to a Tavern Talk before, is just to have a recap on the session that's gone and just have a little chat about how the campaign's going. Spoiler free, of course. And we're going to be doing a double one today. We're going to be doing the Forbidden Lands one first, which is why you can see the four of us here who are all members of the Forbidden Lands game. And when we're finished, we're going to aim for about an hour. When we're finished, we're going to swap video feeds, and I've got some of the players from Vazen on standby, and we'll bring them in and do a second part. So the idea is I'm going to actually upload these to YouTube as 2 separate videos. So, yeah. First, what does that mean? First subscriber?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, wow.
No, I think it's first comment. First commenter.
No. I've had a subscriber. Hold on. I had one single subscriber.
Yes.
One single subscriber.
Anyway. We'll have to look at what that means
me.
exactly.
It's you.
If you've subscribed, then that would be it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's gonna be the same as all the previous Tavern Talks we've done, except we're just gonna be doing 2 back to back. Yeah. So the big thing I wanted to point out here is that I've got a list of topics to talk around with the last episode, and some of the stuff we've talked about after that, but it's not probably enough to be. It's probably not a full hour's content. So hi Attila. So we're relying on the chat to kind of ask us questions. And that's kind of the whole idea of this Tavern Talk, is an informal discussion of how the campaign's going, talking about some of the topics that came up, and also allowing a bit of more interaction with, with our fans than what we would normally have during a live session where we're actually playing the game. So yeah, think of questions to ask and hit us with them at any time, and we can address them either, next in the queue or straight away, whatever. Yeah.
Come on.
God. Tony, you're gonna be on next, right? So
I'll be asking hard questions.
exactly. Cool. So the first thing to talk about is prep, and this is gonna be probably a little bit boring for the 3 of you on the call with me, so I apologize in advance. But this is something I want to do every Tavern Talk, because I think it's important for other GMs running it to know how people are prepping their games, because Forbidden Lands doesn't need a lot of prep, but it does benefit from focus prep. So that's just kind of what I wanted to talk around. If you'd watched the previous Tavern Talk, you would have, if you remembered as well, I was using a number of different programs to handle all the various bits and pieces that we were tracking. I was using a digital whiteboard called Miro. I was using a virtual tabletop called Gtove, and I was using Google Sheets for character sheets and Discord for rolling. I'm still using more or less all of those, except one of the things I did in prep this time was I migrated all the Miro content into Gtove, which is the virtual tabletop, the free virtual tabletop. So I'm just going to flash that up on the screen so people can see what I've done there. So this is the Gtove thing. You'll notice that this is the map we've been using for the game as we've been playing. But what I added to it is over here to the side, I actually uploaded the travel image that we had in Miro. And these are just like tokens that are sitting on there. They're locked. By the way, this is like a player view, not the GM's view, because my GM's view is covered in notes, the map, which would be pretty spoiler heavy if any of you saw them.
Show us.
So yeah, this is basically the same thing I was tracking in Miro, which is a nice little handy journeying kind of crib sheet. And then underneath it here, I made this new combat tracker. So I made this in Photoshop and uploaded it as technically what's called a map. And I have these little tokens, these mini tokens to track, strength and damage, etc., conditions, and reputation I haven't gotten around to yet, but it's something we need to start thinking about. It just kind of dawned on me at the last minute. And then for combat tracker, I actually have some minis for everybody here, so I could grab I can't can't grab it because they're locked, of course. So yeah, I could grab like a mini from down here, for example, and drag it. So these are minis or tokens, and I could drag it onto the combat tracker. And the idea is in future, this is just a nice, quick, and simple way to track combat visually. It'll be on any maps that we're using for reference. It's all going to be in one place. So that's one thing I did in prep. I also uploaded this map in prep. Uploaded this octopus mini as well, or token, I should say. Uploaded tokens for Greta and for Nanny Goat. Yeah, and that sort of thing. Oh, and also tokens for Lilla and Olaf, the NPCs. So I kind of had tokens just to kind of represent the various people that we knew were there. I didn't upload tokens for the NPCs from the lagoon because I wanted that to be a little bit random. I had a list of names and I wanted to just kind of pick some out. So if I had a little bit more time in prep, I probably would have fleshed out a little bit more of the village occupants. But I knew that there was something very specific going to be happening in the lagoon. And that brings me to the next thing that I was going to talk about. First of all, very quickly, you can see this. This is actually another map which is got Fog of War on it, and this was a second village that I'd prepped because I wasn't sure if the party were actually going to go to the lagoon, and because in my prep I had an idea where they were going. They're going to be skirting close to the lagoon or to the swamp, but they weren't necessarily planning on going into it. So I telegraphed during the show that they could see these buildings up ahead, and I didn't know if they were going to avoid them or not. And I knew they were looking for a village to drop Lilla and Olaf off at. Mm-hmm. So I also prepped a non-swamp village, which I've got it hidden because I don't want to waste that prep. I'll be using it as another village later on somewhere. But that's completely random as well. Anyway. So that's the first bit of prep was these bringing these things all together into Gtov, so I didn't actually have to switch between Miro and Gtov all the time. The next thing that I did was I thought about if they came to this swamp, I wanted to have this octopus thing prepped as like a monster encounter. So it's pretty straightforward. The idea came from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. There's a monster in it called the Bog Octopus, and it's kind of iconic a little bit to Warhammer, and I love the concept of a Bog Octopus. So in prep, I had a look in the bestiary for Forbidden Lands, which is where I'm at right now, and there's an entry for a giant squid, which is more or less what I'm after, right? So I had a look at it, had a look at all the stats and everything, and it has a strength of 14, which is pretty high, and I scaled that down, I think, to either 9 or 10. Yeah. So, but I was planning. This is something I did on the fly. So I knew if I needed to, if it was too deadly, I could just on the fly modify its strength a little bit depending on who is going to be engaging with it, etc. And because it was basically a one-on-one with basically our non-combat guy facing off against a monster, I knew if I kept it at 14, it probably would have killed him very quickly. However, in reality, the strength of 14 is not used in attack rolls. That's effectively its damage track. Right? As its damage goes down, monsters don't reduce the amount of damage they do. Their damage is straight here under the attacks. So, for example, a tentacle hug, you're being squeezed by it, and it tells you to roll 8 dice plus a weapon damage of 1. Or with weapon damage of 1, right? So 8 dice you're always rolling regardless of how much damage you've done to the monster. And I didn't actually tweak any of these, so I used these all as they were written, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I lowered the amount of health it had basically to make it a little bit easier to kill. And I decided that on the fly when I was looking at it, I think I'm going to lower it from 14 a bit to something a little bit lower. So I had prepped this monster. I had read over the monster attacks just to have an idea of like what the different ones did. But I didn't memorize it or anything, and I just referenced it during the actual encounter.
Can I introduce like a little mechanical side road here?
Yeah.
This is an interesting thing I think about monsters is that, so like this one attack is you roll 8 dice. that gives you what? It's like 70 something ish percent of doing at least like one success. Um, so it seems like a lot of dice, but in effect, it's not particularly dangerous. Like, I think that's an interesting thing about monsters and Forbidden Lands because with NPCs, the GM at least has the op of pushing rolls, even though like
Yeah.
I find like when I'm jamming, I rarely do that. But with monsters, typically, like it's said that you don't push the rolls, but you're rolling this many dice, and the chances of it doing a lot of damage are relatively low. Though there's always a chance you're gonna roll like 5, and then
Yeah.
it's disastrous. But yeah, I think it's an interesting just mechanical point about Forbidden Lands. Like you get these big handfuls of dice, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be quite so dangerous.
I guess that with some of the monster attacks, you could potentially just roll something horrendous, depending on the type of attack that happens.
Yeah, the weapon damages are also different, right? So
Yeah.
that can make it a lot worse.
Definitely. I mean, most of these, the devouring attack is certainly the worst one because it does. It's got the 8 base dice and it does weapon damage of 2, which did get rolled against you, and I think it did like 4 damage or something, or 5 damage or something, or I don't remember.
No, I think I was I just had nothing left. I was
Oh yeah, that was the last thing it did, right? That's right.
like my
So I just needed
agility.
this-
No, like my agility, I broke it trying to dodge,
Yeah.
and it just ate me.
On a devouring
That's
attack,
what
so
we
it's just like,
said.
exactly. We were just like, well, okay, and I think I got a success on the roll anyway because I'm rolling 8 dice.
Yeah,
You're
which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
like, well, it's not going to miss you. You're lying there unconscious in its grasp. It's going to swallow you.
It probably actually worked out better for me that I had broken my own agility so it could eat me, as opposed to doing a critical injury by doing strength damage.
Yeah, quite possibly.
So.
Well, we had Harry almost get killed, and then Eric almost get killed. So it was brutal session.
Yeah.
Like-
Yeah, the quicksand. We should talk about the quicksand at
Oh,
some
the
point during this.
quickstand. Was that?
That was
the
awesome.
last session as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that right now. Yeah. Yeah, so quicksand basically happened just leaving. In fact, it was the first thing that happened before we left the forest. So basically like right here,
Yeah.
on the outskirts of the forest, we rolled for a quicksand mishap, which was interesting.
That's
I was
going
not
into the
prepared
marsh,
for that
wasn't
at
it?
all.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a nice little way of depleting PC health, if you will, like adding damage to you all without needing to actually throw enemies at you. So that was a nice little bit of environmental.
It was like that far away, I think, from a.
Yeah, he was
From
almost
Carl.
Yeah.
dead. Like,
Yeah, it was a
That's right.
Sarlacc. It was a Sarlacc Boba Fett moment for sure.
Your friend Kiva came to help.
If you think
And Greta.
I really should make the environment a lot more threatening
Yeah, I think it's interesting
because
Yeah.
I just I think it's worthwhile for people to appreciate the danger of going out of your village and doing stuff. There's a
Yeah,
reason why people think adventurers are nuts.
yeah, it's
Like,
safe for your
why
village.
wouldn't you stay home and just be a carpenter? Yes, it's not as much fun.
Because it makes for a
No,
boring
I think
game.
that's-
Well, unless you're
Exactly.
playing,
Yeah,
unless
no, I
you're
think
playing
that's very true,
Pitchfork.
though.
Unless you're playing Pitchfork, in which case carpentry is where to get real threat.
Yeah, it's interesting that you kind of like go traveling, and which I really like, because in a lot of the other games, you never kind of go up against the environment. And anyone who's kind of spent any time outside knows
Yeah.
that walking through a marsh is just horrendous.
Yeah.
Walking through just a forest is terrible sometimes if it's really thick. So it does give you a good sense of it's all going to go a bit wrong if you step foot wrong, which is good.
Yeah, and you're going through this environment that is more dangerous than reality, but like you're hiking a mountain, and it's something like you get 2 or 3 mistakes, and beyond that you get to like life-threatening conditions, like in real life. And yeah, if like a couple things go wrong and you make a couple of mistakes, suddenly you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And you don't have griffins coming to eat your donkey, so it should be dangerous, which is I think really good. And it's a
I think didn't someone get eaten whole? That was you, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, no, I just
Yeah.
got slurped right up.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, the quicksand was definitely
I
cool.
love it.
We've had some interesting, and we had Trousergate due to mishap tables, and we've now had a quicksand
Insect.
almost lethal.
So over that.
Yeah, but we've almost had a lethal quicksand encounter. So it's kind of interesting that we're rolling so many mishaps and getting some that are, fun. I think.
Yeah.
It definitely makes it. I don't know. I mean, some games would probably call that distracting from the plot, distracting from the game. Where
Yeah, it's,
when you shut the fridge, you get slowed down by having to deal with stuff.
Yeah.
although it does add to our kind of like our relationship because of what happens in those situations and how we will end up kind of interacting with each other.
And I think that
It's probably a GM. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
It's probably a difficult thing to make a sort of a GM judgment of how much to play it up and how much to play it down, depending on whether things really are getting totally bogged down. So finding the right level of misery is probably really difficult.
Yeah.
So if you have some thoughts on that, Matt, it might be valuable for people to understand your thought process on exactly how much misery is the right amount of bucks for misery.
I mean, for myself, the big
swamp is miserable.
yeah, the appeal to me for this game is that it's pretty grim, right? And I'm basically running a lot of the stuff as written in the book. So I'm not, other than like I lowered the health on the octopus, mainly just because I felt like it still would be a big challenge, but I didn't want it to. I didn't really necessarily want it to kill Arlek. I wanted it. It was great that he got swallowed. That everyone kind of came to his rescue right at the last minute. That was kind of perfect. It kind of worked out really well. But I did kind of realize that throwing like a full I had telegraphed that we'll get to. This was my next bullet actually, so I'll just jump straight into it. I did want to telegraph that there was a monster in the area, so I kind of gave the rumor that there was something that was kind of taking livestock away. It started taking people away, and that they were a bit worried about it. So instantly, they should have known that their two pack animals were going to be at risk. So they offered to put the pack animals in this like isolated small hut, and there were you could have said like, oh, we're gonna bring them into the big house with us, or more of you could have slept in the hut to watch over them, something like that, just in case a monster attacked. But it was just Arlek on his own, and he was happy to do that, to be there on his own. So I was like, well, fair enough. Like, I'm not going to not throw this octopus at you when I've clearly telegraphed that it's there. Yeah. So
it's true.
That's playing
that's
to your
why
point.
He went.
Playing to Harry's point, though. That's kind of adding to the misery factor a little bit, you could argue, because that was a very unfair encounter for our one least martial character to go toe-to-toe with a monster on his own. Was kind of like, people could see that as being really unfair, and I could have, as a GM, I could have just decided not to do it, or played it very differently, and it like made you hear it creeping around, or like it was pushing the floorboards underneath you or something, made it a bit more creepy, but so it wasn't actually there, giving you time to raise the alarm. But I kind of wanted to put the fear of the setting into Eric as a player, and also the audience as well, make it like, okay, shit, this is a really dangerous land, and kind of wanted to also juxtapose it against the previous combat that we'd had in the last session, which was against the 3 Saurians, and I kind of made that one deliberately easy to ease everyone into how combat worked. So I was kind of going for quite a few things there. Yeah, go on, sorry.
It didn't feel that easy. It felt like a near run thing for me.
That was an easy combat from my perspective.
Oops.
I was kind of debating how many Saurians to throw at you, and I was kind of like, well, there's 4 of you. You're not super you don't have a ton of experience and abilities and stuff. 3 seems about right, and there's only 2 attacking you at first spell, so you kind of outnumbered them. Not initially 2-1, because the 2 of you joined in later, but anyway. I did that was kind of more of a let's learn how to do combat rather than throwing a monster at you, which would have been a bit more brutal. Anyway.
No, I mean I'll say that with the squid and the shack, like I at no moment felt that it was unfair or that like
Mhm.
I hadn't like owned the
No.
situation. Like I loved it. I thought it was awesome. Um, so yeah,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
that's definitely not a problem
But
for me.
I would say that while you definitely did telegraph that there was a creature of some type in the vicinity, I not not for a second did I imagine that it would be, and it will be tonight. You know, from what you said, it could have been in the vicinity, and it could have been any time, or it could have been only a environmental thing that never directly affects us. It, you know, I would say that from my perspective, it wasn't really clear that it was definitely going to be an encounter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure that if I went and slept in the shack, a squid would have come and eaten me. But I mean, it was in the realm of possibility, right? And that was enough. And that's the reason that Arlick went in the first place, is that he kind of sees like tending to the animals as sort of like his job, and if there's some giant octopus eating, that he wants to be there at least to try and do what he does.
Yep. Cool. So the last bit to talk about with prep, from my perspective, is random encounters. So again, I'm going to flash up the Game Master's Guide. No, I won't actually. So in the Game Master's Guide, there's a big, massive encounter table. And you roll d66 against it. The lowest half of those results, so 11 to 36, is always nothing happens. So you've got a 50-50 chance whether there will be an encounter when you go into a new hex. And if you then encounter one, you're, depending on the terrain, you roll for something. So I knew they're moving into plains on the map, away from the trees, because they told me which way they wanted to go. Again, that's also prep for me, by the way, is asking the players what their intentions are in the next episode, so I can focus my prep. I'm not prepping for things all over the place. I'm actually asking them what their intention is, so that I know I can, I'm kind of preempting the session a little bit. And for me, that's a super important thing, because it does reduce the amount of time I need to prep. You'd be having that discussion anyway at the start of a session, so I'd rather have that happen offline in advance, and then have the session run more smoothly, and actually not be stressed as a GM with having to have a ton of stuff to just improv, or have done a ton of prep for stuff that I wasn't actually going to be using.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess,
I
an
never
important
used
step.
to do that as the GM,
Same.
and I think learning from your example has been really good. Just in the amount of stuff that you can ask players to do and to make your life easier. I
Yep.
always used to be the over prepper, and
There's an
then
element
for
as
a
well
while I was the zero prepper.
Yeah, I was an over prepper as well, and there's an element of wanting to have a bit of a magic show almost with your players, and be like,
Yeah,
look, you can go wherever you want, and I'm ready for it, right? Whereas if you ask them in advance, it kind of takes a little bit of that magic away in a way. That's like how my brain kind of thinks about it. I thought about it before, like, I just want to have everything ready. They can go any direction they can possibly go, and I've either got random tables ready to go, or I got tables of NPC names. Like, I can just pull something out of my arse, and we're good to go. But
Let's face
in
it,
reality,
players-
it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of stress as well when you are doing that prep, because it's not focused prep; it's general broad prep. And where do you stop, right? Where do you stop? Where do you draw that line? And if you actually ask the players and you get that buy-in at the beginning, yeah, they know that you're prepping for what they've said, but it's only the start. You're only asking them where they're intending to, like, the direction they're intending to go, and then it just opens up from there. So
Yeah.
but it actually, just that small step really helps focus prep and makes my life as a GM a lot easier. So yeah. Anyway,
The good thing is that you've got a few things ready, then no matter what you end up
Yeah.
doing, as a GM, you go, oh, look, Matt prepped this, even though you actually prep 2 or 3 other maps that
yeah.
you might never ever see.
And I
ever.
prepped 2 village maps, because you told me that your intention was to escort the 2 NPCs to a village. I was like, okay, you're planning to find a village to drop these like hangers on off, so you don't have to like babysit them all the time. Fine, I'm gonna prep 2 villages and to have a think about. So I also did the random village prep as well. So they're completely randomly generated, with NPC names and stuff in them, but not a lot else. Like, I didn't have necessarily like motivations for everyone. Anyway, so that was also some prep I did, which is also really fun. There's a really good website which allows you to, at the click of a button, generate a random village, and I did that. But then I actually felt like that's prep I enjoy myself, is rolling the dice, coming up with all that stuff by myself. So I would definitely use the website live for an instant village if I needed it. But
What was the website, Matt?
I'll pop it in the chat. Let me just pull it up very quickly. Cool. There it is.
It might be the wrong
fblgen.azurewebsites.net.
Okay.
So it's in the stream chat there.
It's not the one I thought it was.
And you just, at the top, you just click on village, and then it comes up with everything. So it's got a dungeon generator, a village generator, a treasure generator, NPC generator, and refresh just refreshes it, and it's in English and Swedish.
Is there in the FPL books? Is there like a treasure generating chart?
Oh yeah, lots of them.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'll show you actually.
That's always something that I've struggled with. You can't show me. I can't get anything on your face.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, then I won't show. But yeah, basically there are treasure lots and lots of tables to generate that. So, yeah.
But I think that Forbidden Lands is almost exactly what I wish Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay could always have been. It kind
I
of
like that, Harry.
that I always wanted it to do.
There is a reason, as a huge Warhammer fan, that I love Forbidden Lands. It does do a lot of it ticks that low fantasy itch quite nicely, while still allowing a bit of the kind of adventuring feel to it, which can feel out of place in Warhammer. Like in Warhammer, because you're playing these often playing like common careers, and it's like, why on earth would my peasant or my charcoal burner could be out halfway halfway around the Empire looking for cultists? Whereas this is like you're playing adventurers
to make your character into an adventurer.
Yeah.
Doesn't everyone do that?
Yeah.
But
for a long time, I didn't know how. I would try, but I just couldn't think how. It took a lot of personal learning and just wisdom that comes with age before I understood how it was you do things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, with you, Matt, I mean, the good thing is that if you've like generated a couple of things, then you don't have to use it for like weeks or months in somebody else's normal campaign. Until one day you go, oh, someone went to X village. Well, here's what I made earlier.
Yeah.
And
that's massive. I've always done that. Even when I did too much prep, I would try to reuse stuff I'd come up with, including like NPCs. If I'd prepped an NPC, I would tie it to a location. If they didn't visit location, that specific location, like an innkeeper or something, and then later on they were in a different place, I would just be like, well, I just take exactly that NPC I'd prepped and just stick it in a different location, and I don't have to come up with something on the fly, because it's like they're not going to be going back to that location probably, and if they do, I can just come up with someone new. And I was doing that all the time for a Coriolis action play on Mud and Blood. I did exactly that. I came up with lots of NPCs and fully fleshed out. I was basically just dropping them in. I had at any one time, I think I had like 20 NPCs, which is way overkill, right? But 20 fully not statted out, but like motivations and everything else. Like I had little hooks for how I would like how they should sound and all that kind of stuff. And it was like it was a lot of prep actually. But I basically, if I would use 2 or 3 in a session, I would just do 2 or 3 new ones for prep for the next session. So I came up with like 20 at the beginning of the campaign. Anyway, so yeah, I think the idea is definitely, if you're not using something in a session, don't make it too specific that you can't just pick it up and drop it somewhere else. That's general GMing, like wise prep.
Gaming on the fly is always my favorite, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back to long prep. It's too stressful. And improv actually isn't that hard, especially if you share the heavy lifting with the players.
Yeah.
And this is like a fun, creative, social activity, right? So it should. I see no issues in sharing the creative burden with players as well. So
Yeah, that's part of our job as well to do that.
and if people don't want to do that, that's also fine. Like if you've got normally enough players that if just one or two other people are riffing off the GM and coming up with stuff, that's absolutely enough to get everything moving along. You don't need to have it as like you don't need to have a vote every time so that you're introducing some sort of narrative mechanic. So anyway, I find it works really well. Yeah.
We're half an hour in. Shall we move on to Stronghold?
Yeah. Strongholds. So this is something that didn't come up in the session, but we did talk about it in prep or not in prep. We talked about it after we had the session. So one of the things I did is I started asking the players in Discord in chat afterwards, like, okay, so do you think you might want to spend some time in the swamp? Because the swamp, to me, like I've got this book called Fever Swamp, which is an awesome OSR book all about swamps. It struck me that I had never actually run like a campaign or an adventure in a swamp before, and I was like, we're in a swamp, I can rip out crocodiles, I've already done a bog octopus, we've got saurians. This is fantasy that I've never run before. My fantasy has always been very like Nordic in feel, and I imagine up in Sweden and Norway there aren't many marshes. I don't know, maybe there are, but certainly no crocodiles.
There are marshes but no crocodiles.
And like, if you look in the bestiary for Forbidden Lands, crocodiles are listed in the bestiary as well. So it's like, okay, well, they're canon. Like, come on. The only place you're gonna find crocodiles in the Ravenlands are gonna be in the swamp. So, like, is this something you guys are interested in? Are you gonna spend time here? Or are you gonna move on? And there was a discussion. We'll get to that in a second. But then the other thing was, I kind of like threw it out there, like, this is a village which is a startup village, and I deliberately didn't want to choose something really established and big with walls and everything around it, because I wanted this to be a potential seed for a stronghold. It would need a lot of work to get it to resembling a stronghold, because at the moment it's not even like a village, it was like a hamlet, right? Yeah. And it's on the edge of a swamp, which is kind of cool, which means it's not directly in the swamp, it's on the edge of the swamp. It's got trade links with other people. So it kind of ticks a lot of interesting boxes for a potential stronghold. And there was a discussion about it, and we just I guess the decision was that the players as a group, so some people were interested in it and some weren't, and as a group together the decision was to move on and not actually use it as a stronghold, which is fine. But that did bring up the issue of strongholds, and we want to talk a little bit about that tonight. Strongholds are a big part of Forbidden Lands. It's a core element of it. You can ignore it, and you can completely go and play the game without strongholds. But in my opinion, you're gonna feel like your characters are constantly being run down with no chance of kind of getting a break, right? And the other thing, and that's gonna get.
I feel like that.
Yeah, already, right? And the second thing is that you pick, like, the idea is that there's treasure and there's loot in dungeons and things and adventure sites that you can get, but there's not really a way to spend it in the game, and that was a deliberate design choice, which I also really like, because one of the things that breaks I don't want to use the term realism, but more like verisimilitude.
Suspension
Too much
of
alcohol
disbelief.
already. Yeah, exactly. Is the fact that if you think about most, like especially lower fantasy settings, why on earth would a blacksmith in a village want to pay you gold for looted goblin swords, for example? It makes no sense, right? They're not going to want it. If they want it, they're going to trade you like chickens, or they're going to trade you horseshoes or something. They're not going to give you gold. And you shouldn't be able to go to a city in a low fantasy setting and find like the ye old magic shop, and I don't know. It's a little bugbear of mine. I'm not a big D&D fan either. So for me, I really like the fact that the Forbidden Lands is very much like post-apocalyptic. People are concerned about survival and trying to start up again from nothing, basically, or not from nothing, but from like a stagnant state for decades or hundreds of years. And for me, that doesn't make a lot of sense for treasure to be spent there. I know there's been lots of discussions about how this works. It's very much a GM and a a kind of a game and a campaign choice about how a GM will let treasure be spent. And there's a lot of discussion that's happened around this on the forums and communities and stuff. But I'm definitely of the school of thought that treasure is meant to be spent on strongholds, because that's the mechanic. That's why the mechanic is there. And yeah, it kind of gives a reason for players to be invested in making a stronghold, because if you can just sell your loot in any village you come across, it kind of takes away a big motivation for having a stronghold. So anyway,
if treasure is terribly valuable stuff, then you need something commensurately valuable to spend it on. But things that are commensurately valuable are either ridiculous or aesthetic.
And let's face it, in Forbidden Lands,
Can our stronghold be a boat?
yeah, sure, could be anything. Could it be a boat? Oh god, you're putting me on the spot now. Actually, I would accept the challenge of it being a boat.
yeah, it was a large ship. I really like.
Because I know
Pirate goblin.
there are some resources from Mutant Year Zero that I could tap into. It's not called Deep Blue Sea, but something like that.
We were
show it up
just
again?
talking about this earlier in chat.
Oh yeah, that's the one. Dead
Nice.
Blue Sea. That's right.
I've really got to give Mutant Year Zero more of a chance.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, Forbidden Lands is just an evolution of Mutant Year Zero. Mutant Year Zero has an arc, and Dead Blue Sea does talk about having a ship in it. Can't remember if it is actually an arc as such, but you could easily make it into an arc. And I would look at that if you wanted to do a ship and just basically say, yeah, sure. You would have issues because a lot of the upgrades you do, what are called functions and
Which wouldn't
strongholds,
apply.
require things like wood and resources that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get very easily in a ship. You'd have to trade for it probably. And again, like Eric just said, it wouldn't really apply on a ship. Like you wouldn't be able to. Why would you? You want to build a mine? Yeah, on a ship, no.
It's because getting really high fantasy if you start trying to accommodate stuff like that.
Yeah, but also you're just limited. I mean, if you wanted to do that, that's fine. It's just you wouldn't be able to put so much. Like the amount of upgrades you could do would be severely limited. But if you wanted to do that, that sounds badass to me, and I would
But your
certainly.
stronghold would be
It
able
would
to
be
travel.
badass, but I think we could do just a seaside village.
Sure. Yeah.
Seaside
that would
ruin
mean-
tower.
Actually, you know what? Isn't that just the turn of Oban? Seaside ruin tower. I mean, there's other stuff there, but that's not the important stuff.
So
There's a ferry.
I'm just noticed in the chat, Buck Mumrick, who's Simon in our Vazen game, has said shitty goblin swords might be smelted down and turned into tools, though. Exactly, that's why the smith might be willing to trade for them, but they certainly wouldn't have gold lying around that they'd be giving.
Oh, fuck.
So yeah.
You
So
can't really carry it
Um,
around, can you?
Well, if you think about it, how much value does a new car lose after you drive it out of the dealership?
Right.
It's at least half value. So you come back with this piece of crap sword, which originally was not especially valuable because it was a terribly poorly made sort of monster sword. And now it's all blunt and rusty and beaten up, and
Well, this is
it has no great value as a sword. So blacksmith's going to give you scrap value for a chunk of pig iron.
yeah, and this is something that comes up
If you're up for it.
often, not just in Forbidden Lands, like communities, but I've seen it all over the place. And it's people who take, they'll look at a equipment list in a rule book. They'll look at the price for an item and be like, "I've got that. I've looted that. That's what it's worth." It's like, no. That's the selling price if you want to buy it
Yep.
at like base like RRP, recommended retail price.
That's retail.
And
yeah,
and
this
that
is a
can go
bugbear
that can go
pie.
up
Ideal
that can go up
condition.
or down depending on the village you're in. And if you've got one, you'll be lucky to get
Yep.
half price for it. Like,
If you're
why do
lucky,
people
yeah.
look at these prices and be like, "Oh, hey,
I had that.
a sword
for
is worth 8 silver. That means I've got this sword,
Yeah.
this used chip sword that
that's probably-
stabbed like 100 people and is guy blunt as fuck, and I'm gonna sell it at a village for full retail value. No.
I had some players that did that, and they ended up with all the stuff. They refused to sell it. They ended up with loads of stuff. I was like, well, you need to sell it at some point. Nope, because I know it's like 8 silver. They're offering you 1.
So
I was having this discussion with someone on the forums, and they were talking about like, oh well, if I am a hunter, I can get a rabbit a day, and the rabbit has X value in pelts and X value in meat. Well, why would I ever go adventuring? Because like the return on investment is far worse. Like it's like no, you're not like there's not an infinite amount of money that people are paying you to go like kill rabbits, right? Like, and they're not going to give you the full retail value that like some peddler would. Like it's
Also,
just,
Well,
if you're
hold
gonna
on.
be
A
doing
GM,
that,
a
you're not
GM
an
could do
adventurer.
that. A GM could do that, but that would be like,
they
I guess.
could.
Here's some GM advice.
In that case, you
Don't
better
do that.
just take it to the eights.
I wouldn't do that as a GM.
I wouldn't do that. I mean, yeah. I mean, this is kind of dipping into economics slightly, I guess, like basic, very basic
I like the
economics.
idea of doing that.
What was that,
I
Harry?
mean, I like the idea of doing that. I've gone into a lot of detail researching historical economies because I wanted to try like what if we did do like a simulation game or something where you're trying to run a tavern or something or coaching in and stuff keeps happening, you're coaching in. And it seems like if that was a TV show, I'd watch it. That's basically the premise of
Well,
the game.
we could do that in this. We can do that in Forbidden Lands with a stronghold.
And I was thinking.
I think the point
But I
is
think the
more
problem is
about
that
the
people
point is more
assume
about
that-
looking at equipment lists and seeing a single price on it, not like a buy and a sell price, just a single
Exactly,
price,
price
and
lists are
being
not
and
an
assuming and assuming that that is an equal buy and sell price for used equipment.
I think that it's just a severe lack of familiarity with history.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not. It's
And
it's
that's
basic
okay,
economics.
everybody
If you
to
wanna
have
if you wanna flog something on eBay, you're not gonna flog it for what you can buy it new on Amazon for, are you? You're gonna be lucky to get half price, unless it's like something that's like no longer available. That's basic
A lot of
economics,
people
right?
have-
I don't know.
well, I think the problem is that basic economics is an advanced skill. And
Maybe.
you can't focus on it unless you've already put experience points into it.
I've done a lot of eBay selling as well. So for me, it's just kind of like I don't know.
But we've all spent experience points learning these advanced skills. Most people have the faintest idea.
Economics,
It's
economics
very
3
big
special talent of eBay.
You know,
That's what-
it's going in the game. I'm writing it in. I'm going to do that tonight.
As far as
wanna
I'm
see it.
concerned, that's what Arlek does, not me.
That's right. That is what Arlic does.
Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk around. Well, we still got 20 minutes, but just kind of. I don't. I guess we could talk about strongholds a little bit more, but I kind of want to save the discussion of a bit more detail around strongholds for when we actually get a stronghold and have that
That sounds-
discussion
yeah.
in a future Tavern Talk. Because I would actually, because we're also trying to help teach this game to people watching, I kind of want there to be a stronghold at some point, hopefully soon.
I'm very keen.
As
Yeah,
a
I
player, viewers, I am going to make a stronghold happen.
And
I'm
I've-
interested as well.
I've GM'd this game a lot, and I've never GM'd. I've GM'd it what I would consider like more than just a few sessions. Once I think, where I did like about 10 sessions, and the players I was playing with had no interest in doing a stronghold. They just wanted to do. They just want to do the adventuring and the fighting and stuff. And I was like, okay, that's what they want. That's what they're enjoying. Fine. And I knew it wasn't going to be a long-term campaign, so I wasn't going to force a stronghold on them. And we had played with the same group. We had played Mutant Year Zero, and they'd had the arc, and they interacted with the arc, but they weren't actually that interested. They're more interested in going out in the zone. So I kind of knew, okay, not the right group for going into the kind of the nitty gritty of the stronghold. But for this campaign, for this channel, definitely interested in doing it. So yeah, I want to save a bit more discussion around the strongholds for a future Tavern Talk.
Yeah, I think that I don't know, same as Eric. I think it'd be really handy, and knowing the way the system works.
Yeah.
I think we definitely need to have one if we want to stop trying to survive in the wilderness and actually have a place we can call home and come and go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yep.
I do like the fact that it could be a little village, or it could be some ruined keep, or whatever it might be.
Yep.
It depends on what you end up getting. And I think later on, if you were to really kind of get experienced in the game, you could have 2 or 3 strongholds and go between them. But that would be way in the distance.
Yeah. But I'm excited to actually give that mechanic a bit of a kind of a play test, if you will, because I've never done it. So for me, it would be a
I
first.
really enjoyed the arc.
Yeah, me too. I love the arc, but the arc is different because you start off with one, right? And it's built into the
Yeah.
mechanics that you have a project that starts, you vote on the project at the beginning and all the rest of it. So it's kind of like it's assumed that you are interested in upgrading this arc, also because you're losing people every
Mass
session, etc.
Effect would have sucked if you didn't have the possibility to upgrade the ship.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a trope for for video game. A lot of video game role playing games, I think, these days is having having a home to upgrade. Like Skyrim, that was one of the I think it was the very first DLC that came out. Was it?
Yeah.
Big other point for me. Yeah, that was Hearthstone.
Hearthstone, right? And Fallout 4 when it came out, like
true,
you
yeah.
instantly had like the
I
base
didn't
buildings.
do much of that.
Yeah, but I mean, I did.
Yeah.
I did a lot of it, and I don't know. It's like I quite enjoyed that as well, where it's kind of like
Yep.
it's something a little bit different to do. It's anyway, and you're kind of seeing it more and
It's
more.
much
People
more
kind of
vast.
people are kind of considering it as a big thing. You look at Matthew Colville, the big YouTube D&D guy, and like he did a Kickstarter for a D&D Strongholds book that was like super successful. It's like people really want to do it in the role playing game. So
You used to be able to do that in AD&D. You know.
yeah, there was
Or
like
in fact, even before then, in the original D&D,
right.
the red box, blue box.
But it hadn't
you
been
could
for
basically start-
they hadn't put it in for a long time, so it was like let's
No.
bring this up to date with 5th edition,
Yeah.
and yeah, people were crying out for it, so it's cool. Anyway, so yeah, we'll be talking more about strongholds in future videos.
Great,
Fenhorn's
like a share with you. Remind me to do that.
Fenhorn has just mentioned in the comments as well that it doesn't actually take that much time to play, during play to manage a stronghold. He's saying that in his adventures, the players spend about 15 minutes each session with it, and it also helps generate adventure hooks. I'm kind of hoping that will be the case we have it because I don't want to spend. We have a 2-hour window to play, and if we're spending like quarter of that, like half an hour, doing a kind of stronghold simulation, that's kind of cool, but it's also could be a bit over long. So we might try, especially initially, we might try and do a little bit of offline, like looking at resource management and that sort of thing, the kind of slightly more boring elements of it. But anyway, so that's strongholds, and the last thing I wanted to talk around was the swamp adventures. So I mentioned that I asked the players if they were interested in spending time in the swamp, because I actually I knew that the journeying tables in the book aren't really swamp centric. They're generic, but they're very, very much flavored for sort of Nordic climate, so forests and plains and that sort of thing. And a lot of the results didn't really make much sense, especially looking at the hunting table. So the first thing I did is I looked at the hunting table, and I'll just show this, bring this up here, and I came up with a
Where do people think Pete come from?
yeah, from peatland, from moors, from swamps. So this is basically, again, because there's a crocodile in the bestie area. I figured that gave me permission to assume that that Forbidden Lands, that Ravenlands, could support reptiles, crocodiles, basically. So I went. I kind of went to the areas of our world that have climates that support crocodiles, and came up with an alternate marsh hunting table, which you can see here on the screen. And yeah, that's basically what I came up with. So this is very similar to the hunting table from the main book, but it doesn't have foxes in it. It doesn't have deers and boar and that sort of thing. I've replaced them all with kind of roughly equivalent animals. And the two big ones are the rock pythons, and the crocodiles will attack you if you fail your hunting roll. So you basically get like a mini combat encounter with them, which is what happens with a boar, by the way. If you fail to shoot the boar on your first attempt. So I thought that'd be kind of cool.
We'd be able to hunt swamp hogs.
What was that? Sorry, swamp hogs.
Yeah, swamp hogs.
That's basically capybara in my in my book. Not really, but sort of. Anyway, so
they're giant rodents.
They're giant rodents. Yeah, they're related to the guinea pig, aren't they? Giant guinea pigs, basically.
They're cute as all heck.
Their closest genetic neighbor, however you want to say that, is the guinea pig. So, but obviously they're like 100 times the size. Anyway, so the idea here is like I came up with this just in case, because I know you were low on food, and even if you don't spend a lot of time in the swamps, you're likely to want to go hunting in the swamps. And I wanted to do this because of pelts as well. It'd be kind of cool to come out of the, even if you're spending only half a session doing some hunting in the swamps, it'd be cool to come out of it with, some like crocodile leather or some python, like some snake leathers, some otter pelts, those sorts of things, which I think just is a little bit different, right? And why not? Like, it's easy to come up with this. You just have to think of the right kind of animals that fit the right terrain.
Yeah.
Assign logical meat and pelts that are also tie into the meat and pelts in the book, so you're not like skewing it too much like away from how the book is balanced. So yeah, and then I've got the stats there for a rock python and a crocodile in case they do get which you shouldn't be seeing, of course, but it doesn't really matter. If you were to encounter them and they would attack you, I've got the stats right underneath there as well. The crocodile is straight out of the book. That's how it's like labeled in the book, and I just made the rock python a little bit weaker in terms of like its base attributes. In fact, its strength is down 1. Otherwise, it's more or less the same. So, the other thing I was thinking about was looking at. And in fact, I'm just gonna flash these up here because it's actually in the player's handbook, the journeying section. So let me just pull that up very quickly. I'm here already. If we look at the journeying, that's not the right bit. So foraging and stuff. So if we look at, like, for example here, mishaps for leading the way. If you're in the swamp and you're trying to navigate hex by hex and you have a mishap, some of these aren't necessarily going to make sense. Like, well, I guess we could look at one at a time. Quicksand certainly makes sense. Or we could say it like you get sucked into a quagmire, right? That makes sense. Blocked terrain makes sense. Lost makes sense. Sprained ankle makes sense. Torn clothes makes sense. A landslide is basically ground suddenly opens beneath your feet. So we can make that be like a sinkhole or something, rather than a landslide, like a mini one. That could work as well. A downpour, definitely you could have rain.
Not good if you're in a swamp.
No, fog definitely works. A wasp's nest, sure, that could work. Mosquito swarm is certainly applicable. And then a savage animal, I just basically would change savage animal to be one of the ones from the list of the hunting animals, right? And in fact, that's what it says here. The GM chooses an animal from the table. That's the new table I put in. And then a persistent animal. So all that actually works as written for a swamp. And I was going through them and thinking about, okay, what are some other things that could work here? And there was one that I thought I would need to change, which might have been the making camp.
Yeah,
but it's still got
difficult to do in a swamp.
Well, it's still, yeah, but it's also still talking about insects, and there are ants, I believe, in one of them. And that was the rest one, wasn't it? Ants, lice, mosquitoes. So in fact, they're actually okay. These actually aren't too bad. You could definitely use them for.
You could use fire as a instead of it actually catching fire, it could just be you can't make fire, so you end up getting cold.
Everything's too humid.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So yeah, there wasn't that much more to do actually, but I was thinking about looking at it and maybe making a few changes to it. But in fact, also thinking about focus prep, just having a quick glance at it, it's fine as it is. I won't be doing that.
Yeah.
Really, the only thing that needed changing, I think, was the hunting tables to make the animals feel a little bit more swamp-like, and that's kind of it. So I'm basically prepped by doing that, by coming up with that table. I'm basically prepped for some swamp journeying if the party decide they want to do that.
So we will go south away from this one.
Yeah, I mean that was fun to do as well. Like
I get the impression that Charlotte really doesn't want to do this one.
It's cool. Like we don't need to go in the swamp. It's fine. So we're gonna see what happens. We might go through. There was talk about going out of the swamps. If I actually bring the map up again, there was a little bit of talk about going into this lake, and then in a boat, like getting a boat, going into the lake, and then going down the river a bit and leaving the swamp via boat, which should be cool with me.
Nature's highway,
or going north, even
That's
going
right.
up north in the boat. So,
Mm.
yeah, like
Absolutely.
it's totally up to you guys what you want to do. That definitely is possible. You just need to find a boat or procure a boat, or boats. Bearing in mind you have pack animals with you too, which I'm assuming you wouldn't want to leave in this in octopus town.
No.
So yeah, before I rattle on too much more, that's kind of where I got to with my notes for the session. and wanted to turn it over to any questions from the from people watching, from the viewers. So if you've got any questions, now's the time to throw them in chat. If you want to, if you want anything, I'll have a quick glance over them just to see if anything came up. I guess you've been watching them too, guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Keep an eye on them.
It'd be kind of cool to have a swamp troll as well. Trolls are something. I guess this is kind of spoilery. I love trolls. Trolls don't get enough screen time in my games, and I think a swamp troll would be pretty fucking cool.
That'd be cool.
But not to say there's going to be a swamp troll in the next episode.
Swamp troll illustration coming up.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess people would have been asking questions as they went. I know there were some kind of comments and questions as we were going. I don't see any kind of popping up. So, yeah, stay in chat. We're going to take a little bit of a break just to bring on the other players for Vazen, which we also ran 2-3 weeks ago. And it's going to be run next week. So we're going to have the Tavern talk for Vazen. Eric's going to stay, of course, because he's the GM.
Shoot it out.
Kick you two out. And bring, I think we got 2 new people to, in fact, or we've got all 3. I think we have all 3 of the others joining us, possibly.
1, 2, yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone's joining us.
Cool.
So I'm gonna put up a little stay tuned thing, mute the audio just for a couple of minutes while we swap the video around. So stay in the chat, stay watching if you've been watching our first Vazen episode, and you want to hear us talk about that. And that'll be about another hour. So thanks for watching, and thank you for the comments. That's been it's been good.
Yeah. See you soon.
Okay, everybody.
Cheers. I'll see you later. See you Tuesday.